Welcome back, it's me Lou, and I'm here for another action figure review, and today we are looking at a custom action figure that I made, and it's this guy right here. This is my custom G.I. Joe Classified Stalker action figure. So, ever since we were blessed with the G.I. Joe Classified series from Hasbro, one of the Joe characters that I really wanted to add to my ranks was Stalker. I loved Stalker as a kid. I thought he was a really cool character. I believe he's one of the higher ranking Field Joes, I think. And I don't know, there's so much about the character I love. It seems like every time Hasbro gives us a new iteration of G.I. Joe, there's always a new version of Stalker that goes along with it. And when they launched the line last year, I was kind of hoping that we'd get a Stalker figure by now, but we didn't. And I took it upon myself. I'm like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and make a Stalker. This guy isn't perfect by any means, but for at least for now, it's a good placeholder until I get an official Hasbro branded Stalker action figure. So yeah, here's my custom Stalker. And let's talk a little bit about Stalker and what makes him so cool. So what we have over here, this is the original 1980s Stalker, as we saw him way back when. He kind of had the camouflage fatigues. He had a beret. He kind of had that 80s, 70s mustache going on. He was a cool action figure. He looked very... I don't know, he just looked, I don't know, when you think of G.I. Joe, he just looked like a very G.I. Joe looking kind of character. And I don't know, I just like this guy a lot. Everything about him just looked really cool, completely green camouflage outfit. For some reason, I always remember, the one thing that always kind of sticks out is that, if I remember correctly, I think he has a turtleneck. So his collar is actually a turtleneck, and then the cuffs of his sleeves, they're kind of like... They almost look kind of like elastic sleeves that you get like on like sweatshirts or like sweaters. So that was one of those weird details that always kind of like stuck with me like throughout time. And I don't know, for me this is like one of the very iconic G.I. Joes. I think he was like a first year release, I believe. But the character has taken on many looks throughout, the last, what is it, like 40 or 50 years or 60 years. I take it back. Not G.I. Joe's not that. At least a real American hero is not that old. But yeah, the character's taken on many different looks since the 1980s. And one of the looks I really like for the figure also is this was a more modern take on the character. So this was from the G.I. Joe. I want to say this might have been a part of the Pursuit of Cobra line, or it might have been a precursor to the Pursuit of Cobra line. So around the time when they did the G.I. Joe movies, there was G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra, and then there was G.I. Joe Retaliation. So around that time period of the movies, they were kind of doing a G.I. Joe figure line that wasn't based off the movies. And what they were doing is they were taking the classic characters, but they were giving them like this really modern, revisionist kind of look to them. And I really loved the updated Stalker figure. It was really cool. This one here it's Sergeant Stalker. He's a ranger like he's always been, but they kind of gave him this more modern look. He had dreads. He's a very handsome man in this photo also. It's a very handsome version of Stalker. And they gave him that kind of like base body that was really popular at the time. Like this base body, they used it so many times on different figures, but it really worked on Stalker. And this was a really cool figure. I still have it. I have it loose. And I used to have it carded, but I kick myself all the time. I had a bunch of the modern G.I. Joe figures from this line, all on cards. And then a couple years back, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, I sold them all. And I've been kicking myself ever since because they're freaking expensive on the secondary market. And I really wish I held on to them. So there's a lesson to be learned, and I've said this in past videos. Always think twice before you get rid of a toy. There's chances are there's a reason why you bought that toy to begin with, because you might have really wanted it or you really liked it. So always think twice before you sell it, because once you sell it, it's gone. It's gone forever. And if you want to repurchase it, chances are it'll be hard to find, or worst case scenario, it'll cost like 6 times as much than when you first bought it. So I don't know. I get bummed out every time I see this figure on the card, because I used to have it and I don't have the card anymore. And even though I do have the figure, the whole package deal is, I think, this part of the whole experience of this era of G.I. Joe. And it pisses me off that I sold it. But I'm running off on a really weird tangent. Let's get back to Stalker. So yeah, here's my custom Stalker. I still kind of wanted to give him that Ranger look. He needed the beret. It was a toss-up on what to do with the beret, because on the original G.I. Joe is a camouflage green, whereas on other iterations of Stalker it's black. In terms of using a base body, let me pull out the base figure. So this is the G.I. Joe Classified's Flint action figure. And when I saw this figure in the stores, and when I actually got one in hand, my first thought was, this is an awesome action figure, and it would make a great base body for a Stalker. Now, if you look close enough, I believe the figure underneath this vest is essentially the same figure as the G.I. Joe Classified's Duke action figure. So the body is essentially Duke. The only thing is that it's just a repainted body. They gave him a new deco. He has camouflage pants, whereas I believe the Duke was just plain green. They painted the original knee pads. It was initially gold, but they painted them black. They painted the shin guards kind of like, it's not even black, I think it's like a dark gray. And then his outfit's completely colored differently also. It's kind of like a dark gray / black. And then they gave him this really cool like tactical vest with all the ammo straps on the side, and it looks cool. And just like every Flint figure should have, he has his trademarked beret. So when I saw this figure, I'm like, you know what? He has all the pieces here needed to make a Stalker figure. There's a great base body. Half of the figure is colored like what it should look like. And he has a beret. Stalker has a beret. I could easily make a Stalker figure. So I took Flint and I used him as my base, and then I created this guy here. Now the thing was, I didn't want this to be a simple repaint, because in all honesty that's what it was mostly going to be. Essentially I was just going to take this figure and just repaint parts of it and make this guy. But I kind of had to figure out ways I could change it up just a little bit, so it's not exactly the same figure. So the first thing was, alright, this is using the Duke body, and I have 1 or 2 spare Dukes that I have in my parts bin for making customs, and I'm like, you know what, I still have those extra knee pads. Let's swap out the knee pads for the gold ones. And I know a lot of fans out there hate the gold armor, but I don't mind it so much. So I'm like, okay, let's at least change out the black knee pads for the gold ones. So he has the gold ones. And the gold kind of works also, just because it carries over into the gold that's on the upper torso with the bullets and then the buckle right there. So okay, I'm like, okay, we could do that. And the next obvious thing is, okay, Flint here is a white guy, Stalker's a black guy. I gotta repaint the flesh tones. So I repainted the flesh tones here. I repainted the upper chest right below the neck. I recolored that flesh tone and recolored the flesh tone in the arms. And since this guy has brown gloves, I'm like, I don't want to keep the brown gloves because then it'll just look like Stalker's bare hands. So I went into my parts bin and found a pair of Marvel Legends hands that were black. So there were these black gloves, and I'm like, you know what, let's take the black gloves and swap them out and put them in here. So my Stalker's gonna have black gloves. So I painted the forearms a new flesh tone color, same with the upper chest. Repainted the wristband up here black, so it looked like it was part of the glove, like it was the cuff. And then I'm like, alright, the upper body, it looks too much like Flint. If I just keep this the way it is, it's going to look too much like Flint. At very least, I need to add more green to it. Now, if I was the most talented customizer in the world, I'd repaint the shirt green, but I hate doing that kind of stuff because, you know, those are articulated parts, and then when you move it, you get joint rub and paint starts rubbing off. And as I've stated in previous videos, my favorite customs to do are the ones where I don't use that much paint, because I hate when stuff looks too painted on, or I hate it when I start moving the elbows or the knees and then the paint starts rubbing off and it just looks weird. So I was thinking to myself, okay, what could I take here and paint green, just because Stalker is predominantly a green uniformed figure. So I'm looking at this vest, I'm like, you know what, I could take this part of the vest right here and color that green and kind of match the color right there on the pouches. So to the best of my abilities, I kind of did the best I could and tried to get a somewhat close color to the pouches. And then I painted the upper chests of this vest piece green, so it gives his upper torso a much greener look, and at the same time it's kind of it's almost like a callback to the I'm not sure if any of you remember this, but there was the G.I. Joe vs. Cobra line that was released in the early 2000s, and the Stalker there came with this jacket and it was unzipped, and then I think there are two different paint variations. There was a green jacket with a black undershirt that was exposed, or there was the black jacket with the green undershirt. And then once I painted this part green, it kind of takes me back to that old figure from the 2000s. So it's not necessarily the classic Stalker look, but this kind of bears more of a closer appearance to his early 2000s figure, which I have somewhere in the house, but I'm too lazy to go out and dig it. So I painted that part green, and at the same time, it kind of looks pretty cool because it reminds me of the armor that they wore in the movie Aliens, the James Cameron directed Aliens movies. So characters like Hicks and Hudson, and you know, they wore that kind of like chest body armor, and I want to say I think this looks like it was based off of Hicks's outfit from the movie Aliens. And if, you know, once you paint that green, you really see that chest armor, and I think Hicks even had the bullet shells on the side. So that was done. You know, I gave him more green, and I'm like, you know what, let's paint the beret green also. The original Stalker figure, even though it was camouflaged, it was still a green beret, so I'm like, let's give this guy a green beret. I don't know what the significance is of this symbol is here, but it's nicely painted already with a nice detail in it, and as much as I kind of wanted to repaint it, I just kind of left it alone because there were some Stalker figures that actually had a red emblem on the beret, so I'm like, okay, at least I'm kind of keeping it true to some iterations of the character. And then for the head, I had a spare John Stewart Green Lantern head from the McFarlane DC Multiverse line. And I'm like, you know what, we'll just use that head, we'll paint a mustache on him and see if it works. So I did that, and it kind of works. The challenge there, though, is that the G.I. Joe Classified had a different peg than the McFarlane head I was using. It had a really giant ball joint. So this was the initial peg, and that was socketed inside the neck. But the ball joint that was up here, it was this giant ball. And I tried trimming it, as you can see here, but I didn't do a clean job of it. And then whenever I placed the head on here, it wouldn't fit right. So I'm like, you know what, let's just use the original McFarlane ball joint for the neck, and which is this piece right here. So this is the original ball joint from the DC McFarlane Green Lantern figure for the Jon Stewart one. The smaller ball here is what attaches to the head, and the larger ball here is what attaches to the neck of the McFarlane figure. So what I did on this is actually shaved the bottom part, so it was almost in similar to shape like this. So it was thin enough to slot into the neck here. And if you look carefully, there's a little bump right in his neck, and that's actually part of a paper clip. So I pierced his neck on both sides, drilled out a hole on here, and just used that as a pin to hold this in place. But there was still kind of some play that this would go back and forth a little, so I end up just super gluing it to keep it firm. The does still have articulation. It can actually still look left and right and up and down. I'm just not doing that because I don't want to scuff up the paint here. So yeah, that was everything that I did to turn Flint into Stalker. Now, is this perfect? No, it's not perfect. But for now, for me, it's a placeholder. What I plan to do now is make a custom box for Stalker and hang him on my wall with my other G.I. Joe classified figures. He's a character that I'm kind of surprised that we haven't gotten a figure of yet. Because as I stated earlier, I believe Stalker was one of the original G.I. Joe figures that we got in the 80s. Like, I think he might have been like Wave 1 or Wave 2. If I'm wrong on that, please correct me down below. But I really think, to the best of my knowledge, I think he was one of the original G.I. Joe figures that we got. So I was kind of surprised that we got Flint before we got Stalker. But at the same time, I'm grateful that we did get this figure because it's basic enough that, you know, I got this guy. And the irony is that Flint is actually the Duke body, and when Duke first came out, I was actually contemplating making a Stalker from Duke. The only thing that held me back was that I didn't want to invest the time in repainting everything. Whereas this guy was, I could make compromises. I had no problems keeping his shirt black still. But I love the fact that this guy had the camo pants, and I felt that really, you know, that really sold me on using this as Stalker. So don't be surprised if, you know, this Duke body, we see it again in the future. Like, without a doubt, I really think that they're going to use this figure again and give us Lieutenant Falcon. I think they're going to give us Falcon with this body, and I'm sure they'll give us more characters with this. But this is a really cool figure. The vest piece especially, I think that's a great detail. So let's wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want a custom Stalker figure of your own, I hope this video gave you some ideas on what you can do to make one for yourself. Stalker is a great G.I. Joe character, and I think he's much needed in the ranks of the Classified series. He's very beloved. He's been in the cartoons and the comic books, and I don't know, he's an awesome dude. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you pulled something, I don't know, insightful from it. You know, I love making customs, and I normally close my custom videos out with the same thing. You know, if you haven't made a custom, go out there and make a custom for yourself. A lot of times I'll see people online, you know, they'll like see a custom and they'll ask the person, oh, is that for sale? Is that for sale? You know, so, I mean, there's a lot of customizers out there who do sell their stuff, but then there's also people like me who just, you know, they want to make these things for themselves because for whatever reason, maybe there's a hole in their collection and there's a character that doesn't exist yet in figure form and they just want it. So they'll take it upon themselves to make the figure. And, you know, I challenge you to do the same thing. You know, if there's a character that you're very fond of, whether it's in video games or comic books or TVs and movies, and if they don't make that character, you know, take it upon yourself and create a custom. It's not, you know, it's not easy, but it's a very rewarding experience. And at the same time, you know, I think you gain another skill from it. And if you're just you know, if you've already dabbled in the joys of customizing or modeling or toy building, whatever, you already kind of know what I'm talking about. But for the uninitiated, you know, just go out there, take a gamble, and, you know, make yourself a custom. So once again, my name is Lou. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I greatly appreciate it. Feel free to stop by anytime, and hopefully I'll have more customs for you. Take care.